You can now order a Disturbin plush. The link will be in the description and pinned in the comments. These are limited edition, so hurry and get yours while you still can. This case takes place in Long Island, New York, USA in the year 2014. Patricia Ward was a 66-year-old woman who lived in Long Island. Patricia worked as a language professor at Farmingdale State College and was well loved by her colleagues and students, dedicating 28 years of her life to her career. Patricia was described as a quiet person. Neighbors would often see her taking her dog on walks down the street, keeping herself to herself. Patricia also had a son with whom she lived with, a 35-year-old man named Derek Ward. The two of them had moved into an apartment together sometime in July of 2014. Derek had been struggling with his mental health for over a decade, and this was one of the main reasons as to why he was living with his mother. Over the years, he had been arrested by the police a number of times. These arrests involved a gun charge in 2006, a criminal mischief charge in 2011, and he was also known to local law enforcement as he had been charged for an illegal substance possession. His issues worsened over the years, but it was in 2013 that his mental health began to rapidly decline. His grandfather passed away in 2013, and this is believed to be what caused his mental health to spiral. Despite a couple of run-ins with the police, Derek was described as a non-violent person. Wanting the best for her son, Patricia helped Derek with his mental health appointments where she could, and would book them for him so she knew he would be getting the help he needed. Derek was also taking medication to combat his issues. Those that knew the mother and son stated that she seemed to be very protective of him, and that the two were always together. On the night of the 28th of October 2014, at around 7:50 PM, neighbors of Patricia and Derek looked outside and were met with a truly bizarre scene. They saw Derek dragging what appeared to be a corpse into the street, and then kicking a human head. As Halloween was approaching, the neighbors assumed that this was some strange prank. But this was no prank at all. Upon closer inspection, they made the realization that the body was indeed real. Derek had dragged his mother's body into the street and had kicked her head down the road. The police were immediately called and arrived on the scene. They found the body of Patricia laying in the street in only her underwear. Her head was found 20 feet from where her body lay. The police covered her over with white cloth and quickly went to work to find out exactly what happened. Her son Derek was nowhere to be seen, but as I said, witnesses had seen him dragging Patricia's body into the street, so of course, he became the main person of interest. The neighbors told the police that they didn't hear any shouting or screaming coming from their apartment that could have indicated that they had an argument. Officers found a trail of blood leading from outside into the apartment, and inside the apartment, they found a pool of blood and a knife that had clearly been used in the attack. Then, 30 minutes after they received the call about Patricia, operators received another call. This call was coming from some of the railway workers in the city. Someone had jumped on the tracks into an oncoming train. Investigators were sent to the scene, and it was soon discovered that the person who had jumped on the tracks was indeed Derek. He was found with a pistol and 100 Valium tablets. I tried to find information about Derek's toxicology report. In my search, I was unable to find any information, so I'm not sure if one was even conducted. One of the witnesses who found Patricia's body stated, "I saw the head first, long, black, straight hair and a partial face. I did a double take, thinking it was a little shrunken head you hang for Halloween. I opened the window and realized what it was. I thought I was in a horror movie." Following the murder of Patricia, an autopsy report was conducted on her body. The results concluded that Patricia had suffered broken ribs and multiple stab wounds to her body. What exactly caused the outburst is unknown. All we know is that Derek lashed out for some reason and attacked his own mother. He beat her, stabbed her, and then decapitated her. He then sat in the apartment for some time next to where she lay. After a few minutes passed, Derek grabbed his mother's head and body and dragged her to the streets, and kicked her head 20 feet down the road. He then left the area, leaving the neighbors to make the chilling discovery. Derek walked over a mile away from the scene. As he was walking, he came across the train tracks and jumped in front of an oncoming train, ending his life. It also turned out that Patricia had actually booked Derek in for an appointment regarding his mental health. He had run out of his medication that he was taking for 4 days by the time of the murder. And what is most tragic is that he was only 2 days away from the appointment to get the medication he needed. Derek was too old to be covered by Patricia's insurance, and they struggled to find a doctor who would accept Medicaid. They finally found one at the cost of $200 for a 20-minute visit, but unfortunately it would be too late. The underlying reason for this happening is likely due to Derek not having access to the medication. If Derek could have gotten to the appointment sooner, it could have very well saved Patricia's life. Patricia's brother was interviewed after the murder, and he said that Patricia had told him that Derek's behavior had become increasingly erratic in the days leading up to the killing, describing that on one evening she had dropped a fork while making him some dinner. This led to Derek becoming angry and agitated. He began complaining that the sound of the fork hitting the ground caused his head to hurt. Knowing that something was seriously wrong, Patricia begged Derek to go to the hospital, but he refused to do so. Despite this small altercation and Derek's mental health issues in the past, no domestic issues had ever been reported between the two, and by all accounts, the mother and son got along well. Patricia's brother went on to say, "He killed my sister because he couldn't get the prescriptions he needed. For 4 days, he didn't have his meds. She had an appointment set up, she finally met a compassionate psychiatrist, but she never got to make it to see him. She's dead because he suffered from mental illness, and we didn't know how serious it was. We're in terrible shock. She was a wonderful person." It also came out that Derek had complained about hearing voices inside his head following the passing of his grandfather, and as a result of this, he spent 6 weeks in a Long Island psychiatric hospital. Loved ones speculated that Derek may have been suffering with schizophrenia and depression. Despite attempts to get him the help he needed and even being evaluated by a psychiatric hospital, they were never able to get a diagnosis to determine if he was indeed suffering from schizophrenia. That diagnosis would have probably saved both Patricia and Derek's life. Many of you who have watched my content for some time may have noticed that there is somewhat of a running theme. On this channel are many cases involving people with serious mental health issues. Of course, just suffering with mental health doesn't mean you're going to kill. But in some of the cases I have covered, if these issues were better addressed by professionals, or if help was more readily available, it's likely that many of the cases would have never happened. One can only hope that such help becomes more accessible and efficient in the near future, and maybe these horrific cases will be avoided. I shall also leave you with a chilling statistic I discovered while researching this case. The fastest growing category of family homicide is children killing their parents.